Today we're going way, way back in time. But this isn't just about digging up old artifacts. We're here to unpack a story that actually shapes the world we're living in right now. We're going to explore why ancient Indian history isn't really about the past at all. It's about our present.
So, why should we care? I mean, we're talking about a story from thousands of years ago. Well, it's because the echoes of this distant past are, believe it or not, all around us. They're shaping our modern society in ways we probably don't even realize. Answering that very question is the whole point of this explainer. So here's our game plan. First, we'll get into why this history is so important. Then, we'll dive into the incredible mix of people that came together to form the subcontinent. After that, we'll see how a single identity somehow emerged from all that diversity. And finally, we'll connect it all back to the challenges and realities of today.
All right, first up, why does any of this matter? Well, because this period isn't just a collection of old stories. It's the story of the very foundation of civilization in this part of the world. Literally how people went from clearing forests to building entire kingdoms.
I mean, think about the absolute basics of our world. Farming, living in cities, having an organized society. Ancient history shows us how all of that got started. It's the story of the massive shift from a wandering nomadic life to a settled one. It's about learning to use natural resources, build the first villages, and then cities, and eventually kingdoms. And what's really incredible is that the very languages we speak have their roots buried deep in this ancient soil.
Now, building on those foundations, we get to one of the most fascinating parts of this whole story. Ancient India wasn't built by just one group of people. No, it was formed through this massive commingling, this great mixing of many, many different peoples over a very long time.
You had the earliest inhabitants, the pre-Aryans. Then came the migrating Indo-Aryans, and the story doesn't stop there. Later on, you had waves of Greeks, Scythians, Hunas, and Turks. All of these different groups made India their home, and each one added their own unique thread to the art, the social systems, the languages, creating this cultural fabric that is so complex and rich that today it's pretty much impossible to separate the original threads.
And you know what's really cool? We can actually see this fusion happening in the languages themselves. It was a genuine two-way street. Ancient texts from the north are just filled with words from Munda and Dravidian languages which were spoken by people in the south and the east. And at the exact same time, the earliest literature from the south was absorbing words and ideas from the north. It was a real cultural conversation happening across the entire land.
And check this out. The very words for things like cotton, for navigation, even for basic farming tools in the later Indo-Aryan languages, they can be traced back to the languages of those earliest inhabitants. Now that tells us something really profound. The foundations of technology and agriculture in the subcontinent were built on the knowledge of the cultures that were already there.
Okay, so with all this incredible diversity, all these different peoples and languages, how on earth did a single unified identity ever begin to take shape? That question brings us right to our next topic, the forging of the very idea of India.
Well, pretty early on, we start to see this concept of the subcontinent as a single place. The name Bharatavarsha, or the land of the Bharatas, pops up in epic texts, and it was used to describe the country as a whole. So this wasn't just seen as a random collection of separate lands, there was already an awareness of a larger shared space.
The origin of the word Hindu is also pretty fascinating. It all started with the Sanskrit word for the Indus River, which is Sindhu. Now, in ancient Iranian languages, the S sound often became an H, so Sindhu became Hindu. And what's crucial to understand here is that at first, this was a geographical term. It just referred to the region around the Indus River. It had nothing to do with religion or a specific community. The name India actually comes from similar roots, through the Greek name for that same river.
This idea of unity was also political. You had this powerful concept of a Chakravarti, which basically means a universal monarch. Kings who tried to rule the entire land, all the way from the Himalayas down to the sea, were celebrated with this title. This ambition, even when it wasn't actually achieved, it helped forge the idea of the subcontinent as one single political space.
And of course, language played a huge part in tying this vast land together. Back in the 3rd century BC, under the Emperor Ashoka, a language called Prakrit was used as a kind of common tongue, a lingua franca, in his inscriptions all across the subcontinent. Then, centuries later, by the 4th century AD, Sanskrit took over that role, becoming a unifying state language even in the most distant regions.
But maybe the most powerful unifier of all? Shared stories. These great epics, like the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, weren't just known in one region. As this quote shows, they were studied and cherished everywhere,
from the deep south all the way to the famous intellectual centers of the north. These shared cultural touchstones created a really profound sense of unity.
And this brings us to our final and, honestly, our most important section, connecting all this ancient history directly to the present. Because this isn't just a story that's over and done with, it's a living legacy, and it has some really complex consequences.
So looking back honestly means we have to see the whole picture. On one hand, ancient India saw incredible progress, some truly remarkable advances. But on the other hand, we have to acknowledge the stark social injustices. The system was built on inequities against the lower classes and against women that are, frankly, shocking to us today.
And the reality is, these ancient structures, they haven't just disappeared. The caste system is still a barrier to true democracy. Sectarianism can still stop people from coming together for a common cause. And the social subordination of women is a direct survival from the past that continues to hold society back from its full potential.
And this, right here, is exactly why studying ancient history is so vital. It's not about trying to restore the past or to glorify it, not at all. It's about understanding the deep, deep roots of these prejudices that are still with us. Because only by understanding where they came from can we figure out what keeps them alive and ultimately how we can move forward.
So this all brings us to a final, really critical question. The past gave us our foundations, for sure, but it also gave us some of our deepest challenges. So, to build the future that we really want, do we first need to have the courage to truly understand our past? Thanks for joining us.